In the heat of the debate, one moment left the world in shock. Stephen Miller tried to outwit Jasmine Crockett, but what happened next left him regretting every word he spoke. The room buzzes with tension. Cameras flash, microphones hum, and the audience is on the edge of their seats. Two figures stand on the stage, each representing a world of difference: Stephen Miller, the embodiment of political arrogance, and Jasmine Crockett, the calm, unwavering voice of truth. The air is thick, as if the entire nation is holding its breath. This isn't just another debate, it's a confrontation that could shift the tides of political discourse. Miller, dressed sharply in his tailored suit, steps up to the podium with a smirk that oozes superiority. He's confident. No, he's beyond confident, he's certain. His eyes lock on Crockett, and in that instant, he knows this is his moment. The words spill from his mouth like poison. "Well, Miss Crockett, it's clear that your version of reality is, shall we say, a little too idealistic for the real world." The crowd falls silent, the air crackling with disbelief. Miller leans back, his smug grin widening, clearly relishing the moment. He's waiting for Crockett to stammer, to lose her cool, to show even the slightest crack in her composure. After all, no one dares challenge him and walk away unscathed. But Crockett? She doesn't flinch. There's a long pause, and the room holds its collective breath. Jasmine Crockett doesn't even blink. She's not rattled, in fact, she seems more focused than ever. The spotlight shifts from Miller's gloating arrogance to her calm, poised determination. Miller waits, expecting the typical response, an emotional rebuttal, maybe an apology for being out of touch. But what happens next leaves everyone stunned. Crockett steps forward, her voice steady, cutting through the silence like a blade. "Mr. Miller, your problem is not that you don't understand reality. It's that you're too afraid to face it." A ripple runs through the room. Miller's smile falters for the first time. The air shifts. He's no longer the confident, untouchable force he once was. Now, he's visibly rattled. He shifts his weight uncomfortably, his posture breaking for the first time. The audience watches in stunned silence. The tables have turned, but what comes next will leave Miller questioning if he was ever in control. This was no longer just a debate. It was a battle he was not prepared for. The tension in the room is palpable. The cameras click incessantly, capturing every glance, every shift in posture. This isn't just a debate, this is a battle for the soul of America. Stephen Miller's arrogance is on full display, his every word laced with contempt and self-righteousness. He leans over the podium, casting a sneer at Jasmine Crockett, who stands poised, unwavering, with a quiet dignity that demands respect. The stakes have never been higher. For Miller, this is just another chance to assert his dominance, to reinforce the political agenda he's been pushing for years. It's about power. It's about control. But for Crockett, it's something much more profound. This isn't just about winning a debate, it's about the truth. It's about dignity. It's about justice. America is at a crossroads. The people are tired of the lies. They're tired of the manipulation. And in the face of Miller's dangerous rhetoric, Crockett has become the voice of reason, a beacon of truth in a sea of deception. This isn't just a contest of wits, this is a confrontation between two vastly different visions for the country. Miller's words carry the weight of years of divisive rhetoric. His stance is firm, but it's also one of detachment, of arrogance. He speaks of laws and policies like they are mere chess pieces to move around at will, never considering the lives they destroy in the process. To him, this is about keeping the status quo, about maintaining the power that he believes is his birthright. But Crockett? She sees the lives behind the policies. She sees the families, the children, the immigrants who are struggling to survive in a system that was never meant for them. Every word she speaks is a call to action, a plea for a better, more just America. This moment isn't just for her, it's for every person who's ever been told they didn't belong, every immigrant who's been called an outsider, every family that's faced an unjust system. The media is watching, and the public is listening. Across the nation, people have tuned in to witness this monumental clash of ideologies. Social media feeds are already ablaze with chatter. The stakes are enormous. This isn't just about who wins the debate, it's about who shapes the narrative that will define the future. Whatever happens next, a pundit on TV says, as the debate continues to play out, it will change the way we look at politics forever. The camera pans to the audience. Their faces are a mixture of disbelief and hope, captivated by the tension that is mounting in the room. People are leaning forward in their seats, hands gripping the edge of their chairs. For the first time in years, they feel like they're witnessing something real, something that could make a difference. As Crockett looks across the stage at Miller, there's no hint of fear in her eyes. She doesn't need to shout, to match his venom with fury. Her calm resolve is her weapon. And Miller, despite all his bluster and bravado, can feel it. He knows that Crockett isn't just speaking for herself, she's speaking for millions of Americans who have been overlooked, ignored, and marginalized. She's speaking for those whose voices have been silenced for too long. Miller's arrogance grows, but so does his uncertainty. The battle lines have been drawn. On one side, a man who sees power as a birthright, a tool for his own gain; on the other, a woman who fights for truth, justice, and the future of a nation. And with every word Crockett speaks, the audience begins to see the truth they've been waiting for: this is a fight that goes far beyond politics. It's a fight for the very soul of the country. But what happens next will not only define the future of these two figures, it will define the future of America itself. Stephen Miller's rise to power didn't happen by chance. It wasn't the result of hard work and dedication to the common good. No, Miller's rise was built on the foundation of divisive rhetoric, calculated manipulation, and a ruthless determination to maintain the status quo. He didn't win over the public with charm or conviction. He won by exploiting fear, by playing on the very fears that had always existed in the darkest corners of American politics. Miller's story begins in a world of privilege. Born into a wealthy family, educated at prestigious schools, he had access to everything most people could only dream of. Yet, from a young age, it was clear that Miller wasn't interested in the ordinary path to success. He wasn't drawn to fairness or justice, he was drawn to power. He first entered the political arena as a young man with a fiery determination. At first, his rhetoric was subtle, more like whispers than shouts, carefully designed to gain traction without attracting too much attention. But as the years passed, Miller realized something that would shape his entire career: fear, anger, and division were his most powerful tools. They were the currency that would fuel his rise. Miller's statements became increasingly controversial. He was an ardent defender of the idea that the American identity was under siege, that the nation's core values were being eroded by outsiders. He spoke of immigration as a threat, calling for harsher policies and more stringent border controls. His comments weren't just inflammatory, they were downright dangerous, sowing distrust and division in a country already struggling to reconcile its identity. Yet, in the echo chambers of conservative politics, Miller's words were welcomed like gospel. His tactics were calculated and effective, exploiting societal tensions to carve out a niche for himself. He rose through the ranks by playing the role of the outsider, the one willing to speak the uncomfortable truths that no one else had the courage to say. He quickly became known as a political provocateur, someone unafraid to push boundaries and ignore norms. His rise wasn't based on policy ideas or intellectual rigor. It was about making waves, creating division, and, above all, asserting dominance. Miller's disdain for those who opposed him became evident in every interaction. He saw them as weak, as naive, as people who didn't understand the true nature of power. He dismissed anyone who challenged him as either irrelevant or misguided. And when it came to people like Jasmine Crockett, someone who championed justice, truth, and equality, he believed he could easily dismiss them, too. To Miller, Crockett was just another liberal idealist, one of those deluded individuals who believed in naive concepts like fairness. He viewed her as someone who was too caught up in idealistic dreams to ever understand the harsh reality of politics. His smug confidence in his own intellectual superiority led him to believe he could easily overpower her. After all, she was just another politician trying to rise through the ranks, a product of the system he had mastered. To him, Crockett's stance, grounded in empathy and truth, was simply an obstacle to be crushed. When Miller took the stage for the debate, he did so with the air of a man who had already won. He had been in the game too long, played by the rules, twisted them, and manipulated them to suit his agenda. He was used to being the one who controlled the narrative, who set the terms of the conversation. And in his mind, Crockett's calm demeanor, her integrity, was nothing more than a challenge, one he was sure he could easily defeat. But Miller's overconfidence was his first mistake. He had underestimated his opponent. He believed that the same tactics that had worked on countless others would work here, too, the patronizing dismissals, the snide remarks, the calculated disregard for truth. But Crockett was different. She wasn't here to play by his rules. She wasn't here to win based on who could manipulate the facts more convincingly. She was here to expose the truth. Miller, for all his political cunning, had a glaring flaw, his arrogance. His belief that he was untouchable, that no one could challenge him and succeed, clouded his judgment. He had no respect for his opponents, only disdain. He didn't see them as worthy adversaries, to him, they were merely obstacles to be bulldozed. But behind all the bravado, there's a deeper flaw that would soon be exposed. Miller's entire career, his political identity, had been built on a foundation of manipulation, division, and arrogance. It was a house of cards, ready to crumble at the first gust of truth. He thought he could control the narrative, bend the facts to his will, but Crockett was about to show him that no amount of arrogance could ever replace the power of integrity. In that moment, as the debate raged on, it was becoming increasingly clear to everyone watching, Miller's overconfidence would be his downfall. Jasmine Crockett's story is not one of privilege, but of perseverance. She didn't come from a family with connections or wealth. Her rise to prominence wasn't secured by favors or well-placed alliances. No, Crockett's journey was shaped by grit, by the quiet power of truth, and by the relentless desire to make a difference in a world that too often overlooked people like her. Born into a working-class family in Dallas, Texas, Crockett grew up in neighborhoods where dreams were often out of reach. Her parents, immigrants who worked long hours just to keep the lights on, instilled in her a sense of responsibility that would become the cornerstone of her character. They taught her that no matter where you came from, your voice mattered. That no matter how hard things got, the fight for what is right was always worth it. Her early years were marked by struggles that most could never understand. Crockett often helped her mother clean houses after school, finding time to study whenever she could. It was in these quiet, fleeting moments that she learned the value of hard work, and how to navigate a world that was often indifferent to the needs of those who didn't have the luxury of being seen. She knew from an early age that if she wanted to succeed, it wouldn't be handed to her. She would have to fight for it. Despite the odds stacked against her, Crockett excelled in school. She was the first in her family to attend college, earning a scholarship to one of the top universities in the country. It wasn't easy, she was often the only person of color in her classes, and the weight of her responsibilities at home never left her. But Crockett had something many others didn't, an unshakable belief in justice. She studied law with a focus on civil rights, driven by the notion that the law should protect those who had been historically oppressed. It was during her time in law school that Crockett's commitment to fighting for justice crystallized. She spent summers working with nonprofits, helping underprivileged communities fight for their rights, immigrants, refugees, those struggling to get a foothold in a system that was rigged against them. She quickly became known as a fierce advocate for marginalized communities, always willing to take on cases that others deemed too challenging or controversial. Her professional journey took her to the halls of the Texas state legislature, where she worked as a legal advisor. It was here that she saw firsthand how the system could be manipulated to serve the powerful, and she grew even more resolute in her determination to change that system. She wasn't just another lawyer looking to make a name for herself. No, Crockett was driven by a higher calling, to use her legal expertise to create a world where every voice was heard, where every individual was treated with the dignity they deserved. But it wasn't just her professional life that defined Crockett. She was also deeply committed to her community. She organized neighborhood cleanups, led educational programs for at-risk youth, and worked tirelessly to ensure that people of color had access to the resources they needed to succeed. Through it all, she remained grounded in the values her parents had instilled in her: respect, humility, and the unwavering belief that every individual had the right to be treated with dignity and fairness. As Crockett's career advanced, so did her reputation. She became a rising star in Texas politics, known for her unwavering commitment to truth, justice, and equality. Her calm demeanor and ability to stay composed under pressure made her a natural leader, someone who could cut through the noise and speak to the heart of an issue, even when faced with the most powerful opponents. But it wasn't just her ability to speak that set her apart. It was her willingness to listen. Unlike the typical political figures who used their platform to shout over others, Crockett used her voice to elevate those who had been silenced. She listened to the stories of immigrants who had come to America in search of a better life, to the children who grew up in neighborhoods where the odds were stacked against them, to the families who had been torn apart by an unjust system. Her deep understanding of the struggles of others made her an advocate who was both compassionate and unyielding. And now, in this moment, she stood on the stage, preparing to face off against Stephen Miller. Miller, with his divisive rhetoric, his sharp tongue, and his well-worn tactics of fear and manipulation. Miller, who had built a career on dismissing the rights and humanity of people like those Crockett had spent her life advocating for. But Crockett wasn't just here to win a debate. She was here to change the narrative. She wasn't just fighting for herself or her career. She was fighting for the millions of people whose voices had been drowned out by those like Miller. She was here to remind the nation that truth, dignity, and justice were values worth standing up for, no matter the cost. As the debate loomed closer, Crockett took a deep breath, steadying herself. She knew this moment would define everything that came after it. But she was calm. Composed. Ready. Unlike Miller, who relied on his arrogance and divisiveness, Crockett's strength came from something far more powerful: her unwavering belief in the truth. She wasn't nervous. She had faced far greater challenges than this. This wasn't about proving Miller wrong. This was about showing the country that it was possible to lead with integrity. To stand firm in the face of manipulation and lies. To be the change that was so desperately needed. And as the first words of the debate were spoken, Crockett knew one thing for certain: she wasn't here to play Miller's game. She was here to change the rules. The atmosphere in the room crackles with tension, the audience hanging on every word. What started as a battle of ideas had now escalated into a clash of wills. Miller, once confident and poised, is beginning to show cracks in his armor. He leans into the podium, his voice growing sharper, his insults more biting. He's no longer just defending his position, he's attacking, lashing out in an effort to break Crockett's calm exterior. "I'm sorry, Ms. Crockett, but you can't honestly believe the drivel you're spewing," Miller says, his tone condescending. "You act like this country owes you something just because you think you've been wronged. You're living in a fantasy world where truth is subjective, and laws are mere suggestions. But the reality is much harsher." His words are loaded with disdain, aimed at both Crockett's integrity and her beliefs. The crowd murmurs, but Crockett remains still, her eyes locked on Miller. There's no flinch, no hint of defensiveness, just an unwavering calm that seems to pierce through the vitriol. For a moment, the room seems to hold its breath, waiting for her response. Miller notices the calmness in her demeanor, and it irritates him. It's as if she's not even moved by his words. He knows she's the one person who won't be easily rattled, and that frustration begins to build. He knows that if he's going to get under her skin, he has to go deeper. He needs to turn up the heat. He leans forward, his gaze more intense now, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. "Look, I get it," Miller continues, "you've spent your whole life being told that the world owes you something. That your struggles, your pain, should be the center of every conversation. But I'm here to tell you, the world doesn't revolve around your victimhood. The truth is, people like you are holding this country back. The words hit like a slap, and the room reacts with a mix of gasps and murmurs. The insult is sharper this time, aimed at her character, her entire purpose for being here. The audience can sense that this isn't just a debate anymore, it's a personal attack. But Crockett? She doesn't waver. Her eyes remain steady, her posture unbroken. She takes a breath, not out of nervousness but as if she's preparing to meet the challenge with something far more powerful than words. She opens her mouth, but before she speaks, Miller interrupts. Or maybe you're just too far gone. You've built your whole career on this misguided sense of entitlement. You want the world to change for you, and when it doesn't, you scream louder, blame everyone else. Miller's voice cuts through the air, and he presses on, his words growing more venomous. You think you have all the answers, don't you? But let's be real. People like you won't be satisfied until everyone in this country looks exactly like you, until the rules are bent to fit your vision of what America should be. The audience is stunned. The air seems to grow heavier. Miller, in his desperation, has pushed the debate into the realm of personal attacks. He believes he's delivered the knockout punch. But Crockett remains unmoved. She could have retaliated, could have fired back with the same venom, but that would only play into Miller's hands. Instead, she does something that no one, not even Miller, expects. She smiles, not in a mocking way, but in a way that disarms the entire room. She leans forward, her voice soft but firm, like a calm breeze cutting through a storm. You're right about one thing, Mr. Miller, she says. This country doesn't revolve around me. It never has. But it does revolve around something far more important, truth. The room is silent. The audience feels the shift, a palpable tension hanging in the air as Crockett's words land like a soft punch, precise, deliberate, and unyielding. Miller's expression falters for a split second. It's subtle, but the change is noticeable. His brow furrows. He expected her to crumble under the weight of his insults, to lose composure, to get defensive. But instead, Crockett stands her ground, her response calm, dignified, and centered in the one thing that could unravel everything he had built, the truth. The frustration on Miller's face is undeniable. He clears his throat, his face reddening. For the first time, he begins to realize that underestimating Crockett was his biggest mistake. This isn't just a debate anymore, this is a reckoning. And in that moment, the audience sees it. Miller, for all his bravado, has met his match. The audience knows it. Miller knows it. But as he opens his mouth again to deliver yet another cutting remark, the room holds its breath, sensing that this exchange is far from over. The shift is unmistakable. The villain is rattled. The hero, however, is just getting started. The debate hall is heavy with tension, the air thick with the weight of every word. Miller's latest attack hangs in the air like smoke, his sharp barbs still stinging. He's confident, perhaps too confident, believing he's pushed Crockett to the brink. But as the silence stretches, Crockett remains unmoved. Her face is a portrait of calm composure, an unwavering pillar in the storm of Miller's accusations. The room feels electric now, the audience sensing that something monumental is about to unfold. Miller waits, his smug expression never faltering, as Crockett takes a deep breath, collecting her thoughts. She knows this moment will define not just this debate, but the entire narrative that has been built around their contrasting ideologies. It's not enough to rebut him with just facts, she has to expose the truth in such a way that it resonates beyond this room. She speaks slowly, deliberately, her voice steady but carrying the weight of truth. You've made one thing clear, Mr. Miller, she begins, you've built your career on division. You've built your career on making people believe that the very fabric of this nation is under siege by people like me. You've built your power on creating fear, fear of the other, fear of change, fear of progress. She pauses, letting the words settle in the room, the audience already hanging on every syllable. But what you fail to see, she continues, is that the very thing you're so afraid of, the thing you're desperately trying to keep out, is already here. It's always been here. The words hit hard, but Crockett isn't finished yet. She leans forward, looking directly at Miller, her gaze unshaken, her presence commanding the room. You want to talk about victimhood, Mr. Miller? You want to talk about who's been wronged in this country? The truth is, you've spent your entire career rewriting the narrative, turning the victimizers into victims and the oppressed into oppressors. And you've done it with lies, with fear, and with the kind of manipulation that's been tearing this country apart for years. The crowd stirs. The tension that had once been thick with hostility begins to shift, a sense of disbelief beginning to wash over the room. Crockett's words are calm, yet they carry a punch that makes Miller's accusations look small and hollow in comparison. His face tightens, his confident smirk faltering just for a moment, but it's enough. The audience sees it, the beginning of doubt. Miller tries to interrupt, his voice rising, his tone desperate. You don't get it, Crockett. You're living in a dream world. The system works. You're just mad because it's not working for you, for your people. But the truth is, this country was built on strength, not softness. We can't just open the floodgates for anyone who wants to come in. That's not how it works. But Crockett doesn't flinch. She holds her ground, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to Miller's growing agitation. Strength, you say? Strength built on exclusion. Strength built on denying people the right to seek refuge, to have a fair shot. That's not strength, Mr. Miller. That's fear. And fear is the opposite of strength. She lets the words hang for a moment, allowing them to sink in. The room is silent, the audience now fully aware that Crockett isn't just defending her position. She's dismantling Miller's entire argument, piece by piece. Miller, she says softly, almost as if speaking to herself, you claim to defend this country's values, but the truth is you've spent your entire career attacking the very values that made this country great in the first place: compassion, empathy, justice. You've twisted the narrative so many times that you've lost track of what it means to truly serve the people. You don't want equality, Mr. Miller. You want control. You want to keep the power in the hands of the few, and you've disguised that as patriotism. The crowd shifts uneasily, murmurs rippling through the audience. The tension that had once favored Miller now seems to be slipping from his grasp. Crockett's voice rises in pitch, gaining momentum with every word. But here's the thing, Mr. Miller, the people have seen through the lies. They see what you're trying to do. And they won't stand for it anymore. Miller's face is flushed, his chest rising and falling with increasing frustration. He's used to being in control, used to having the final word, but here, in this moment, he is losing it, and he knows it. And let's talk about your so-called American values, Crockett continues. What do you really mean by that? Is it the values that keep families separated at the border? Is it the values that criminalize people simply because of where they were born? Or is it the values that strip people of their dignity and humanity, just to serve your political agenda? The values you're selling aren't the values this country was founded on, Miller. And that's why you're losing. Because the truth is on our side. And the people know it. Miller opens his mouth to respond, his face twisted in anger, but Crockett holds up her hand, cutting him off. It's too late for your lies now, Mr. Miller. The people aren't buying it anymore. And you're not fooling anyone. For the first time, Miller is speechless. He stands there, his mouth agape, trying to formulate a response but unable to find the words. The once mighty champion of division is now standing in front of an audience that has turned on him. He's no longer the powerful figure he once believed himself to be. The cracks in his armor have become gaping holes. And that's when it happens. A ripple begins in the crowd, then builds into an eruption of applause. It starts slowly, with just a few scattered claps, but soon the entire room is on its feet, cheering, shouting, clapping, a tidal wave of support for Crockett. She has done what no one else could do, she's torn down the myth of Miller's invincibility, exposed the hollowness of his words, and turned the tide of the debate. Miller stands frozen, his face a mask of disbelief and anger, unable to comprehend what just happened. The applause continues to crescendo, filling the room with an energy he can't control. Crockett smiles, not in triumph, but in quiet satisfaction. This wasn't just a win for her, it was a victory for everyone who had been pushed aside, ignored, and silenced by people like Miller. And as the audience erupted in applause, Miller stood there, realizing he had just lost everything. The debate had barely ended before the first tweet went viral. The hashtag #TruthOverFear began trending, shared by thousands in the minutes that followed. On Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, the mic drop moment that had turned the tide in Crockett's favor was circulating like wildfire. Video clips of her calm, composed rebuttal to Miller's increasingly frantic attacks were being shared and reshared, dissected by pundits and everyday people alike. The moment had struck a chord. The debate was no longer just about politics, it was a reckoning. Crockett's words, "You've built your career on division, but what you fail to see is that the very thing you're so afraid of, the thing you're desperately trying to keep out, is already here. It's always been here," had resonated with millions. On Twitter, one comment after another flooded in. Jasmine Crockett just dismantled Miller's entire career in one sentence. Truth isn't just a weapon, it's a movement. Another read, "Crockett is the change we need." She didn't just win the debate, she changed the game. Memes flooded timelines with pictures of Crockett's poised, unshaken stance, juxtaposed with images of Miller's increasingly frantic expressions. A viral video quickly emerged on TikTok, with the caption, "When you stand for truth and dismantle a career built on lies." It showed the exact moment when Crockett silenced Miller with her words, the footage slowed down to capture his stunned, speechless expression. It quickly racked up millions of views. It wasn't just the debate that people were talking about, it was the profound impact of one woman standing firm against a storm of manipulation and hatred. The mainstream media couldn't ignore it either. Across television networks and news sites, political commentators were now dissecting the debate, praising Crockett for her composure and the clarity of her arguments. On CNN, a political analyst said, "Tonight, we witnessed something remarkable. Not just a political victory, but a moment where integrity, dignity, and truth prevailed." Crockett's calm response to Miller's attacks was a masterclass in leadership. But it wasn't just journalists singing Crockett's praises. The reaction from public figures was equally as powerful. Celebrities took to their social media accounts to express their admiration. Actor and activist John Boyega tweeted, "Jasmine Crockett just showed us what real courage looks like. She's the kind of leader we need. #TruthOverFear." And, in a heartfelt post, Ava DuVernay, the renowned director and social justice advocate, shared a photo of Crockett with the caption, "We need more leaders like Jasmine Crockett. People who speak truth, no matter the cost." Even politicians from across the aisle couldn't ignore the impact of Crockett's performance. Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren tweeted, "Crockett just laid bare the hypocrisy we've been fighting against for years. A true leader who fights for the people." Republican Senator Mitt Romney, known for his often divergent stance from the more extreme members of his party, tweeted, "Tonight, we saw how a leader stays calm under fire. Courageous. Well done, Jasmine Crockett." The internet had become a battleground of its own. The #TruthOverFear dominated social media for days, turning the conversation away from partisan divides and into a broader discussion on integrity, leadership, and justice. Everywhere Crockett's words were quoted, they were shared as symbols of resistance against oppression and manipulation. The reverberations of her words were felt in small towns and big cities alike. In coffee shops, workplaces, and living rooms, people were discussing the debate. What Crockett had done wasn't just stand up to one man's rhetoric, she had shown America what it could be like if politicians were more concerned with truth than power. The lines between partisan allegiances blurred as Crockett's message of integrity and dignity began to resonate across the political spectrum. Local grassroots organizations took to their social media pages to praise her bravery. Jasmine Crockett didn't just speak for herself, one post read, "She spoke for all of us." This is what leadership looks like. In communities across the country, where people had long felt powerless against the establishment, Crockett's victory became a rallying cry. It sparked conversations about truth, about standing firm against manipulation, and about the kind of leadership America needed moving forward. Even within the halls of Congress, the reverberations of that debate continued. The next day, political insiders spoke in hushed tones about the shift in public sentiment. Sources revealed that several prominent members of Congress had quietly called for meetings to discuss how to harness the momentum that Crockett had ignited. What started as a moment of personal triumph for her had evolved into a national movement, one that could shape the political landscape in ways that few could predict. What happened in that debate didn't just change the conversation, one political strategist told reporters, it sparked a movement. A movement for truth, for integrity, and for change. Jasmine Crockett didn't just win that night, she gave people hope again. The shift wasn't just ideological. It was visceral. It wasn't just that Crockett had beaten Miller at his own game, it was that she had done it with something Miller lacked, humanity. She had spoken to the heart of what America could be, not the fractured, divided America that Miller and others had been pushing, but an America united by shared values of fairness, dignity, and justice. Her victory resonated with individuals who had long been silenced, who had been told that their voices didn't matter, that their struggles weren't worth fighting for. She gave them not just a voice, but a vision of an America that could be more than it was, a country that could still become what it promised to be. And in the wake of her words, that vision started to come alive in the hearts of people all across the nation. By the end of the week, the conversation had shifted permanently. The debates that once felt like political theater were now taking on a new, more serious tone. Crockett's performance had not only shifted the narrative of that particular debate, but it had sparked a collective awakening. What happened that night wasn't just about one woman winning a debate. It was about a people finally standing up and saying, enough. We demand something better. The movement had begun, and it was only just getting started. As the applause for Jasmine Crockett echoed through the halls, her victory began to settle into the hearts of those who had watched, listened, and believed. The fervor of the moment, the rush of victory, was not about a mere triumph over one man, or even over a single debate. It was about something much bigger. In that moment, Crockett had not only defeated Stephen Miller's words, she had reinstated the core values that had once defined the very best of America: integrity, dignity, and justice. For Crockett, this wasn't about outsmarting Miller or proving herself to the world. It was about reclaiming something that had been eroded over time, the soul of a nation that had lost its way in the pursuit of power. For too long, America had been governed by the loudest voices, by the voices that used fear and division to control the narrative. What she had done, in that debate and in the days that followed, was nothing short of an awakening. She had reminded America that truth still mattered, that dignity was still a worthy pursuit, and that justice was the foundation upon which the country could rebuild itself. As she sat in the aftermath of the debate, Crockett reflected on her journey, the weight of the moment settling in. Her rise from humble beginnings, from fighting for communities that had been ignored and forgotten, had led her to this pivotal juncture. This was no longer just about the political arena. This was about the values she had carried with her from childhood, the belief that no one should ever be made to feel inferior, that everyone deserved an equal chance to thrive, that every voice had a place in the conversation. Her victory was a testament to all those who had ever been told they didn't belong, who had ever been dismissed as too idealistic or naive. In a world where power and influence were often equated with money and status, Crockett showed that the true strength of a leader comes not from control, but from courage. It comes from standing firm, even when the odds are stacked against you, and knowing that what you fight for is more important than any temporary victory. In the end, Crockett said in a reflection to a small group of supporters the day after the debate, it wasn't just about outsmarting Miller, it was about reminding America what true leadership looks like. Leadership isn't about tearing people down, it's about lifting them up. It's not about division, it's about unity. It's about standing with the most vulnerable, protecting those who can't protect themselves, and ensuring that the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, has a place at the table. Her words weren't just a reflection of that moment, but a call to action for everyone who had been watching. The battle had always been about more than just winning a debate, it had always been about restoring the country to a place where truth and justice were not just ideals, but daily practices. Crockett's victory was a reminder that leadership is not about power. It is about the ability to inspire others to believe in the power of truth. It is about standing for something greater than personal gain. In a moment where politics often felt like a game, where the loudest and most divisive voices dominated the conversation, Crockett had proven that the quiet strength of integrity could shatter the facade of arrogance and manipulation. And in the wake of her victory, the ripple effect continued to grow. People who had felt alienated, people who had been told their struggles didn't matter, found a renewed sense of hope. Young activists, students, and everyday citizens began speaking out, sharing stories of how they too could fight for what was right, regardless of the power structures that sought to silence them. The language of fear and division was no longer the dominant narrative. The language of truth, empathy, and justice was taking over. Crockett's victory wasn't just a political milestone, it was a moral revolution. It had reignited the idea that politics, at its best, should serve the people, not the powerful. It had reminded everyone who watched that true leaders do not build their careers on creating enemies but on building communities. And it had shown that the real strength of America lay not in how much power one could hold, but in how much truth one could carry. In the days that followed, Crockett's message continued to resonate. Her victory was used as a rallying cry for people across the country to stand up and speak out for what was right, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Social justice organizations, schools, and even businesses took inspiration from her words, launching new initiatives focused on fostering empathy, inclusivity, and justice. For Crockett, it wasn't the applause or the accolades that mattered most, it was the realization that she had sparked something larger than herself. The truth, she had said, is the foundation of any real change. Without it, we are lost. And with that truth, she had shown the nation that integrity was not a weakness, but the strongest weapon in the fight for a better future. The debate had ended, but the movement had just begun. Crockett had not only stood up to Miller, she had reminded America what it meant to lead with dignity. And as the country moved forward, that lesson would never be forgotten. In the battle for truth, dignity, and integrity triumphed. Jasmine Crockett's victory wasn't just about outshining an opponent in a debate, it was about reclaiming the very soul of the country. It was about showing the world that no matter how powerful the forces of division may be, truth will always have the final word. This moment wasn't just her victory, it was a victory for everyone who believes in justice, in fairness, and in the power of standing firm for what is right. Now, the question remains, will you stand with those who fight for what's right? Will you lend your voice to the movement that is reshaping the conversation, the movement that is demanding a better, more just future for all? If this moment resonated with you, if you believe in the power of integrity and the strength of truth, then it's time to take action. Join us. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below, let us know how you're inspired to stand up, speak out, and make a difference. And don't forget to subscribe so you can stay updated on the next chapter of this fight. We need your voice now more than ever. It's time to be part of something bigger. Join the movement. Subscribe, share, and stand for truth. The fight for integrity doesn't end here, stay tuned for more.